Ooh. Hello and welcome to Daddy Issues, the podcast where we do Mexican waves. There is a father and son adventure.
Two-person Mexican waves.
Yeah, well, I mean it'd probably go on for longer than when you're in an arena. But my name is Dominic Archer, and with me, as always, is my co-host Daveangelion Brian. Dave, how are you doing today? Well, obviously, in the video, in the podcast, it says we're doing Neon Genesis Evangelion, and you have just absorbed five episodes of it for the first time in one day or over the course of a couple of hours. How is your brain?
My brain feels electrocuted.
Ooh.
I'm buzzing. I watched 3 episodes last night and 2 episodes this morning, and I think if for whatever reason I had just watched it on a whim, I probably would have carried on throughout the weekend and blitzed the whole season.
Yeah. This is one that it's been on our list because although we say at the end of each episode that nobody listens, even though we say at the end of each episode, what do you want to do next week? If anyone has any recommendations, put them in the comments. And if someone does put in a recommendation, then it's like, oh, cool, yeah, maybe we'll jump to that. But we have a list of like father-son properties that we want to get around to at some point. And this has been one of my recommendations for a while, is Neon Genesis Evangelion. And it's one, you don't rush into it, right? You don't blow your load with Neon Genesis Evangelion. So this is episode 20 of Daddy Issues, and I love it in podcasts where they're on like episode 300, but you listen back and they're like, oh my god, we've done 50 episodes. Can you believe it? And then you're like, I know you've done 500 episodes at this point, but it's cute. It's cute when they're like, oh, we've done 20. So this is a special one for our 20th episodes. We're doing episodes 1 to 5 of Neon Genesis Evangelion, and then we can kind of drop further episodes in as we go. Because again, do you see now, after watching the first 5 episodes, why we couldn't have just done 1 episode of Daddy Issues on the whole series?
Yeah, absolutely. It would have been a long ass episode of Daddy Issues, and we have history. We have previous of overshooting slightly. A couple of episodes that went close to 2.5 hours, and that's more than anybody needs of us.
Yeah. And it was always the episodes we didn't expect, right? Like Road to Perdition.
Well, the shocking
forever.
one was Real Steel. How did we talk for 2.5 hours about Real Steel? I mean, it's great. I love that film, but yeah, we've talked about some high art in this podcast, and yet we spent the most time gassing about a Hugh Jackman, another robots thing, but this time with Hugh Jackman.
Oh my god, Fathers and Robots, round 2.
Is it only round 2? I feel like robots have come up another time. No, I don't think so.
Think about it. Lion King, robots.
Hey, there's a fan theory. Mufasa was a robot.
Lion King Westworld crossover. It's what we've been dying for this whole time.
Can we get Yul Brynner back from the original to play Mufasa? He'd be a great Mufasa, actually.
A Russian Mufasa. He's Russian, right? Yul Brynner.
I think he was Russian, yeah, but he just had this when he was in Hollywood. He had this real deep, growly voice, didn't he?
Yeah. Iconic. Why are we talking about Yul Brynner in our anime episode? Right. This is our first anime, though. We've done animated movies, and we've done manga because we spoke about Lone Wolf and Cub before. But this is our first one on an anime. And before, I want to ask you about your history with anime, if you're a fan, things like that. But before we jump into that, I just wanted to talk about anime a little bit, and this one in particular, because on Instagram I follow a lot of anime accounts. They'll just like randomly throughout just post like random videos from anime where it's like Hunter x Hunter or like stuff that I haven't seen, but it's just like a fun little thing that makes me happy, so I don't have to think about the kind of topics that Evangelion deals with. And on there they often come up with things like when people say to you, why do you watch anime? It's just for kids. And then the video itself will be like tits and explosions and giant swords. And it's like, oh my god, there's a monster. And oh no, her breasts have fallen out of her top when she was diving, firing 5 guns at the same time. And it's like... and I look at them and I go, that's not what anime is for me. Like, that's part of anime, for sure, no doubt, right? Like, ginormous bosoms bouncing in front of a monster is, like, classic anime shit. But Evangelion is much closer to what I get out of normal anime. Only Evangelion is kind of intensified. It's like if you're talking about Death Note, and you said... yeah, Death Note it's about a guy and he writes in his book and when he does people die and there's he's got a giant floating demon behind him. It's like, that is what Death Note is about. But also it's about mind games and philosophy and justice and right versus, if you are judge, jury and executioner, can you be a moral person? And it's like, yeah, it is about a teenager who kills people with his book. But that is the tool to explore the theme.
Yeah, that reminds me of something that our lecturers used to say at uni when we were doing our screenwriting degree. So when when we would talk about a film that we had watched or a story that we were writing, they would say, so what's it about? And your first instinct is to say, well, it's about a guy and he goes here and he does this and this happens. And they would go, no. What is it about?
Yeah.
And that's kind of was my kind of introduction into the thinking about what themes really are, and that stories aren't just a series of cool or funny or sad, tragic things that happen. There's like a parallel subtext to good stories.
Yeah, and that's why for me something like Dragon Ball doesn't necessarily have that much of like I know people love Dragon Ball, like especially Dragon Ball Z, like just huge fans of it, but that he's gotten bigger and now he's glowing and his hair's on fire and he's chucking a massive explosion. It's like, I get it, but that's not the bit of anime that necessarily appeals to me. Like, there's undoubtedly animes have outstanding like visual language, especially for fight scenes and things like that. But yeah. That's not what draws me into an anime. It's like you were saying. What is it talking about? What's it, and anime can get to something that regular television can often struggle with, and it's something I want to come back to later on because I want to talk about David Lynch and how I think David Lynch should make an anime. But we'll come back to that later on. So yes. Oh, this was what I wanted to say. I was thinking, I missed something. Right, this is why the Digimon anime is better than the Pokemon anime. Right, we grew up on Pokemon and Digimon kind of at the same time, but Pokemon is an anime in the there's some cute monsters and sometimes they're funny and sometimes they fight each other and that's it. Right, like it's a face value anime, whereas Digimon is like, there's these giant monsters and stuff, but actually it's about friendship and it's about bravery and overcoming your fears and growing up, and it has all of the it has thematic relevance that isn't just I got the electric badge because I was a good person, like that.
Thunder badge.
Sorry, the Thunder badge. Yes, sorry. But you know what I mean? Like with Ash, Ash has a history of just stumbling from one place to another, losing fights, and then somehow being victorious.
And people feel sorry for him and give him great stuff.
Yes, and that's the thematic relevance of Pokemon.
Yeah, like in comparison, I'd never watched Digimon. I'll put that out there. I was a staunch Pokemon fan, and I would look at, and again, I didn't really understand theme or subtext at that point in my life at that age. So I would just look at Digimon and go, these characters, these monsters are lame. I like Pokemon. That's where I'm at. Looking back, if you could tell me that Digimon had some sort of subtext and theme and was about other things, Pokemon seems kind of like a sitcom by comparison.
Yeah,
it's just the characters never change. They're always who they are, and they just go from adventure to adventure or situation to situation. And by the end of it, they haven't really grown or changed, and their dynamic hasn't changed. It's just, in Pokemon's case, some new Pokemon showed up. Some have come along for the ride, and from what I remember, it's only really when it got to the movies that some real character development happened. But as far as a periodic anime series goes, it was just fun adventure after fun adventure.
Yeah, and that's why the most interesting Pokemon character is Mewtwo. Like, he's more interesting than all of the actual human characters in because anyway, we're not here to talk about Pokemon. Sorry, I've again.
But I wore my Pokemon shirt and everything.
It is a good Bulbafett.
Shirt. If you can imagine, it's Bulbasaur, but he's wearing Boba Fett's armor, and let's just allow you to absorb that and appreciate that for a second.
Do you think the Sarlacc is actually just the top of like a Venusaur?
Ooh, there's a crossover that could happen.
Yeah.
I don't think a Venusaur would enjoy being either in the desert or like underground in a cave beneath the desert. That's not its habitat. That's not where it wants to be.
No. Well, that's why it's angry. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Something to think about, ladies and gentlemen. Is the Sarlacc actually a Pokemon?
I'm just going to take a break and quickly write some fan fiction. Be right back.
So, Neon Genesis Evangelion. Had you heard of it before we brought it up as a topic?
I'd heard the title and seen it in merchandise, but no, I knew nothing about it. All I knew it was anime. That was it.
Yes, yeah. I watched it for the first time last year, and the reason I watched it was because I ran out of anime to watch. It was like, everyone always says it's one of the best, but again, it's just like, I don't care for the giant robot stuff. Like, Transformers doesn't interest me. Gundam, the other really famous big, that doesn't hold any appeal to me. Like, Pacific Rim was cool, but Pacific Rim is very much, once you watch Evangelion, you're like, I got it. Pacific Rim was trying to be Evangelion. Yeah,
it was. It was like trying to adapt it, but then not making it so obvious and not calling it obviously the same thing and adding extra bits. Like, it's like Evangelion, except you have to have two pilots. And we call the monsters kaiju and not angels. So, it's a completely different thing. It's inspired, not based on.
Yes, it takes a lot. It does take a lot from Evangelion, but it's Del Toro trying to do his own thing. And
didn't the second one have a father-son thing? Because the second one is John Boyega, isn't it? And Idris Elba's character from the first movie is his dad.
Really? I haven't seen the second one. Right. Add it on the list.
Okay, but can we do both? Double header.
Okay, we'll do double header next week. Pacific Rim 2.
Don't ever say we're going to do it next week, because I can't think of more than once or twice where that ever happens.
Okay, all right.
But we can put it on the list. That we can do.
Yeah. But when I got round to Evangelion last year, it must have been the summer, I guess, that I watched it for the first time. And what I had expected to be an anime with themes turned out to be so much more than I had imagined. Especially for the time that I was at that point, without wanting to go too much into awful therapy territory. At this point, me and my girlfriend at the time had just broken up, but we were still in lockdown together for like 4 months or 5 months. And we were living in Russia, but she's Chinese. I'm from the UK, so we've broken up. But we're stuck living in the house together in a foreign country that we're both intending to leave. And it's like we're in the middle of the world global pandemic. You know, I'm almost bankrupt. Like it's been a difficult year for a lot of people, but especially me. He says, bringing the conversation. That's enough about me. What do you think about me? As my dad likes to say. That's a daddy issues line. And so when I watched this giant robot anime for escapism, to be like, oh my god, you know, I can't deal with, you know, I'm trapped in the house with the person that I love, but we're not going to be together, and it's like a ticking clock, and what am I going to do with my life? Oh, Japanese cartoons. And then you put on Evangelion, and it's like, oh, fucking hell. Right? Like, it's like a tsunami of ideas and emotions, and like we said, themes, and just when I watch it, I find myself go into this weird meditative state that I've never had with something else, where I don't know. It's until the fights start. When the fights start, then it's okay. We're back in the room, kind of thing. But up until then, I feel like I lose part of myself in watching it. I don't know. It's really difficult to describe. But do you have any idea what I kind of mean?
No, yeah, I totally do it. There are moments of it that are really serene. And when we were both watching it last night, you messaged me to say like this has these beautiful moments of quiet that you can really just get lost in. And I don't think I'd started watching it when you sent me that message, but yeah, I totally get that. And I love how committed they are to the quiet sometimes. There are moments where it just holds. The screen just holds on, and for what is for animation, usually it's all very vibrant and things are always moving. And you know, it reminded me much more of Studio Ghibli movies than I was expecting. Like you said, like sure, it's got giant creatures fighting giant robots, but that's kind of quite a small fraction of the screen time. A lot of the time, it's to do with the characters, and there are moments that linger and really just leave you thinking about what these characters are going through. And the sound, sound editing is amazing. There's a whole episode. I think it's even called Rain After Running Away, where the main character does run away, and it's raining all the time. But the sound of the rain it's like listening to the meditative music or something. And I think when it's not raining, there's like this cicada buzzing in the background that again is really just kind of peaceful, and you feel like you are kind of removed from the world a little bit. And yeah, it does things that I didn't expect. Yes. For sure.
Yeah, there are a number of shots. I remember when it really hooked me was the first episode, and it hooked me because there were just a number of images where I looked at and went, oh fuck, it's art. Right, and it just held, and I think because it is hand drawn as well, rather than computer animated or something like that. It literally is art. Like somebody, not that computer animation isn't art, but you know what I mean. It's
traditionally,
yeah.
Traditionally
I can't remember
speaking,
which episode it is. I don't. Maybe it is Rain After Running Away. Where he's in like a sunflower field. He's walking through a field of flowers.
Yeah, it is. Because I've noticed that too. And it's like it's like Van Gogh. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's such a great show. So we've watched 5 episodes so far. From what you've seen at the moment, could you try and explain what the show is about? You don't have to do the whole plot of what's happened so far over the 5 episodes, but what is the show about to you after 5 episodes?
Do you want me to tell you what it's about, or do you want me to tell you what, in university language, what it's about?
Oh, both.
I can't. Well,
all right. Let's start with the first one. Let's start with the first one first. Do the story. So
the story.
Yeah.
Okay. The story is. Yeah. The concept is that 15 years in the future. Well, no, sorry. It's actually set in 2015, but it was made in 1995. So it's like a futuristic sci-fi thing but 15 years after a global event where the world was attacked by enormous creatures, and half of the planet's population has been wiped out. It's been 15 years of peace, but then another of these giant creatures that are called angels comes back. And we pick up in this world with a young boy called Shinji, who's kind of called to this secret like government facility where it's their responsibility to fight this threat. Like traditional weapons, rockets and bombs and nukes even don't seem to touch this giant monster. So they go to some kind of like shady colonel called Commander Ikari, who runs this like giant robot program. These things that are built to fight giant aliens, or I don't even know if they're aliens actually at this point. I've not got that far. But it turns out that Shinji is Commander Akari's son, and for some reason we don't know when you start the thing. Shinji is the only person who can pilot this giant mech that needs to fight this alien. So he's called by his father, and they're quite estranged. They haven't seen each other for years by the sounds of it. So he gets sort of summoned by his father, little Shinji. He gets taken by a stranger to this weird government facility underground, introduced to this whole world of angels and the mechs, which are called Evangelions. Is that right? That's what they are called. They call them Evas for short, right? Yeah. And then they go, remember that thing that happened before you were born? Well, it's happening again. We're all under threat. By the way, you have to go fight that thing. And he's like, what? What the fuck? And meanwhile, he's dealing with the fact that his dad has come back into his life out of nowhere. But this all happens so quickly. Not like rushed. It doesn't feel rushed, but you're kind of taking all this information in at the same rate that Shinji is. And then when they go, and you've got to go do that, you're kind of like, wait, no, that can't happen. And the story sort of follows Shinji through his reintegration with his father's world from a kind of from a distance, because while his father is the commander of this facility and this program, so essentially his dad is more like his boss than his actual dad, and they have very little interaction other than off you go, fight the giant creature. So I think that is kind of the premise for this thing. But there's an awful lot more to explore than just Pacific Rim giant robots fighting giant monsters.
Yes. Yeah, and part of that, I think as well, that those extra ideas comes from what we were saying about the quiet and the slow nature of it. Is that because you're right, it doesn't rush anything at all, ever. Like, there are moments on the escalator where it's just a far out shot of two people going down an escalator for like a minute.
Yeah, it feels like it's infinite. That escalator feels like it goes on forever and ever and ever. Yeah,
because it's that same thing of ideas versus or concepts versus themes again, because you're right about that infinite feeling, but it's not just trying to tell you, oh, by the way, the staircase is really long, right? Like, that's not what it's trying to get you to understand, right? It's communicating like they're using an escalator to communicate the emotional state of these characters, right? And that's it, right? That, like, yeah. There's not many things else like Evangelion, I think.
No, it made me think of another kind of thing we learned in our degree, in that no scene is wasted. There is nothing frivolous, and like you said, it might seem like the characters are going down an escalator into an underground city, basically. So of course they need to get down there somehow. So you think, well, here's an opportunity for a bit of dialogue, maybe. But you're right. There is more to it, and it reminds me, in the way that each scene is doing the surface thing, and also doing something beneath the surface, and that kind of feels very artistic, and it reminds me of how the titles of each episode kind of made me feel. And besides, like, episode 1 is called Angel Attack, which, you know, is kind of on the nose, but then all the other titles are kind of poetic and beautiful in themselves, because it's not just, you know, Angel Attack and then the real basic whatever happens in episode 2, episode 3. And it really struck me when episode 2 is called Unfamiliar Ceilings. I was like, that is a beautiful title. It sounds like a title of a poem or a painting. And then that is a theme of the story, in that Shinji, our main character, is so he wakes up in a hospital after a big fight in the first episode, and he says, "Oh, that's an unfamiliar ceiling," and then he has to go move in with someone he doesn't know, and it's like another unfamiliar ceiling. It's about the disjointed kind of nature of his life all of a sudden, and he's being thrown from sort of pillar to post and having to adapt to new things changing all of the time. And Unfamiliar Ceilings is a beautiful title. And then Rain After Running Away caught me as well, because it's not just that, it's rain, comma, after running away. Like that's like what you read on a plaque next to a painting in a museum.
Yes. Yeah, I think what's really amazing about the titles as well is that each episode has 2 title cards. Right? It has one at the beginning, which is generally in Japanese, and then it has the neon Genesis Evangelion logo that's behind you on the Skype call comes up like halfway through the episode, and then it's like the English title, Hedgehog's Dilemma, or something like that.
Yeah, that's right? A great title as well.
Yeah, so that's episode 4, I think. It's Rain After Running Away and Hedgehog's Dilemma. That's like the dual titles. And what's really cool about that is it gives you the ability to recontextualize what you have seen halfway through the episode. So it gives you the title to say, like Unfamiliar Ceilings, for example. Then you see the references to Unfamiliar Ceilings throughout, and you're like, oh, I see where it's going with that. But then it gives you another title that will then change your
sort of thought process a little bit.
Yeah. And I for this whole thing, I'm just going to be going, oh god, it's so good, like that.
The sort of the mid credit title for Unfamiliar Ceilings is The Beast, which again is a lot more of a kind of on the nose, superficial kind of title, but it does. I think you said the word recontextualize. It does recontextualize your thinking as you go on through the story.
No, but the thing that I think it's in that one, in the Beast, there isn't a fight in that second episode, right? Oh, we see the end of his fight from the first. Yeah,
it flashes back to sort of show you how the fight happened.
Yeah, but the Beast isn't necessarily the angel, because that's episode 1, right?
Yeah.
Is the Beast. So who and what is the Beast within the episode? Again, is that asking questions of the audience, right? Getting the audience to think, to contextualize, and kind of and go back to it. If we kind of go through the plot for these first 5 episodes. So we start with Angel Attack, and Shinji appears in Tokyo 3. I think I would assume the third Tokyo. The others having been destroyed.
Tokyo 2 exists because there's like a news story happening with the Prime Minister or the President of Japan who's like in his base at Tokyo 2. So I assumed Tokyo 1 got destroyed and they built a couple more. Why? Why not build Tokyo 2 and be like, okay, that's Tokyo 2, and then this city that this takes place in, why is it not called something else? I don't know.
Yeah. So Shinji arrives into Tokyo 3, having been summoned by his father. And as he gets there as there is an angel attack going on. He's thrown straight into it, and he's like, what is going on here? Like, really, he should have just stayed at home. But he is instantly collected by one of the show's greatest characters, Misato, who is she's a captain from Nerve, the organization that Shinji's father runs, and she is like a loose unit. Misato, how would you describe Misato herself?
She's quirky, and for someone who's reached the rank of captain in some government organization, she doesn't seem to take it very seriously, at least in the beginning. And so maybe it was trying to put Shinji at ease a little bit, so she's not all uptight and all governmenty. That he would kind of get his adjustment would be more tricky if he had some sort of stiff upper lip suited person. So she's very sort of free and kind of young. I think she says she's being all kind of like funny and weird, and meanwhile Shinji is quite quiet and just sort of monosyllabic. And she's like, "You're pretty uptight for a kid," and he's like, "Well, you're very childlike for an adult."
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of what she's like. And we see later on, like, where she lives, she's a bit of a slob. She drinks a lot. She eats badly. She yells at people. But then she's also the person that in like a crisis situation, when she's in the command center or whatever, she's very business and military. It's a strange juxtaposition, but she's a lot of fun in the beginning.
Yes, yeah. And as you were saying with her apartment, it's just full of beer bottles, or beer cans rather. And it's just cans and used food, and Shinji arrives into her apartment. It's like, what the heck? Like, what? It's like that seems to be the thing he's the most confused about. Is in all of this is how the hell does she live? How does she live like this? But she has a special roommate that we meet as well, who is the roommate that she already has.
That was before we started watching this. You said to me, "I can't wait to get all the what the fuck am I watching messages." Yeah. And as it began, there wasn't many of them. I'm like, okay, I get what this is, and I'm enjoying it. This is pretty cool. And so it's episode 2 where he moves in with Misato, and this was the first moment when I was like, what? Because he says, Shinji says, "Why have you got 2 fridges?" Yeah. And Misato says, "Oh, don't touch that. I wouldn't want to disturb them while he's sleeping." I was like, huh? What? And then later on, we see this roommate, and it's a penguin.
It's Pen.
It's Pen, which I was like, that's a weird choice for this kind of story. But then it also made me think that there's only one thing I've ever heard of or read that's similar to that, and that is Death and the Penguin. Have you read that book?
No.
It's like a Soviet era Russian novel, and this is a bit of a tangent, but it's set in like some Eastern Bloc country after the Soviet Empire has fallen, and the zoo in this like kind of winter swept city had to just shut down because all the money went out of the city, and the whole place is kind of a desolate shithole. And so the animals are just let free, and this guy, the main character of the story, got himself a penguin and keeps it in his fridge, or I think in the bath full of cold water. That's another great example of a story that's about a guy who has a penguin living in his fridge, but actually it's about so much more. I'd recommend that book if you can. I have an old copy of it that our friend Ash actually gave to me.
Cool.
But so maybe one day I'll lend it to you.
Yeah, to me it has feelings of Blade Runner as well, and especially Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, because one of the major themes within Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is most of the animals in the world are dead and have been replaced with like android animals. Like in Blade Runner, there's that bit where Harrison Ford is with that sexy lady, and she's got an android snake, and there's the owl at the beginning as well, and it's like we've so lost touch with the world that even the animals are fake at this point. And Pen kind of has that feeling to me as well, where he's the only animal in the show that I can remember. You never see like someone's pet cat, or like you never see a dog. Like all of these like animals are presumably gone. They say like thousands of species were wiped out when the first incident happened. And like Pen seems to be the only animal that's left, and he's living in in Misato's fridge, eating curry, horrible curry.
Oh yeah, he hates her curry.
Yeah, but one of the things that's so nice about that is that Pen and the apartment is where they share meals together. There's a big musical change when they eat food together. They all say, "Oh, let's eat," like that, and then the music changes from like silence. It goes do 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 like that, and then they're eating food and they're like having conversation, and then Pen's there, and it's like, oh, it's this joyous moment of life and levity, right? Like the show deals with a lot of concepts of depression, loneliness, isolation. But when they share those meals together and they're all sat around the table and there's a penguin and it's like there's a brighter side of life and of those characters in those moments, those few moments. And the best example of that is in episode 2 where Shinji says, "Oh, I'm going to take a bath." And then he goes into the bathroom and there's a penguin, and he's like, "What?" And he jumps out completely naked to Misato and is like, "Misato, there's a penguin in the bathroom." She's like, "Oh yeah, that's our roommate." And then he's just standing there completely naked and confused. And then she's like, "Do you want to put some clothes on?" And he's very embarrassed, and it's like that slapstick, almost slapstick.
Yeah, it is slapstick. Yeah.
Yeah, but in something that is so heavily laden with ideas, it brings something different, which is
There are moments in the first couple of episodes just between characters in dialogue that I thought that's quite funny. Like they are writing in jokes, like amusing things that people say. So yeah, you're right. Because even though it's like there's big action, big giant robot fights. That's not levity. That's not a bit of fun.
It's not fun. It's not fun like when you watch like Dragon Ball or something like that. Right?
Yeah, or like Transformers, seeing a bunch of robots punch each other. It's like, okay, this is like the popcorn part of the thing. This isn't like that. And this, it's stressful and it's brutal and it's really difficult for the human characters that are involved. So you're kind of just like, I want this to end. I don't want this fight to keep going. Like, King Kong fighting Mothra or whatever. Wait, no, that's Godzilla. Sorry, you threw me earlier.
King Kong fighting Godzilla. It's King Kong fighting Godzilla.
I didn't want to mention King Kong fighting Godzilla because that's something a film that's coming out soon, and you mentioned it earlier, but off pod. But yeah, that's fun. But this is not fun. Like the angels are kind of monstrous and hideous, and the robots are piloted by children. So that's not the fun part of this. And the greater concepts of the show are not particularly fun either. They're more thought-provoking and kind of powerful. So yeah, the moments of levity that are sort of punctuated throughout are between people in smaller spaces, like around a dinner table or going down an escalator or something like that.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between this and then again something like Pacific Rim, where in Pacific Rim, the characterization of Charlie Hunnam's character from memory is, "I don't want to pilot robots anymore, because I used to pilot robots with my brother, and then my brother died, and I don't want to," it's like the idea of being synchronized with your partner is like, "Oh, she's sad, and so I need to also be sad, and then it's like a teamwork thing, right?" And that's the extent of the characterization. Whereas the characterization of piloting the Eva in Evangelion is you are going to feel everything that happens to this giant robot as if it is happening to you, right? Like your nervous system, it becomes connected to the robot itself, which is what allows them to pilot it. And exactly as you're saying, like if the the robot gets its hand cut off or its arm broken, as happens in the first episode, where Shinji's put into the robot, told he has to go and fight this thing, where he's got no fucking idea what is going on. But he's thrown out there to fight it. The angel, the monster, just grabs his arm and breaks it, right? And it's like, that's it, game over. And everyone at the command center is like, oh no. Like that, because they just sent this boy out there and he's screaming. He's in this pod screaming in agony. And they're saying, oh, Shinji, it only feels like your arm is broken. And it's, it's like, oh, well, that's all right then.
Yeah.
Like
when I broke my arm when I was 14, same age as Shinji, I was about 14, I broke my arm playing rugby. And if I was sat in A&E and the doctor came up and went, no, don't worry, it only feels like it's broken, I'd have been like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, but then the next time they say to Shinji, there's another angel has appeared. I think it's episode 3, right? Another angel has appeared. You need to go back out there and fight it again. And he's like, I can't. Right? I can't do it. Not because in the first episode he can't do it because this idea that he's going to climb into that and fight that is like just so preposterous. But by the next time he kind of has to do it, it's like he's terrified, he's traumatized, and they're going to make him do it again and again and again. And there's that really great bit which brings us back into the daddy issues one. Is in the first episode he does it essentially because his father tells him to, right? There's also other bits with the character Ray, who we'll get into in a minute. But in the first episode, his father says, either do it or leave. Right? Like, I brought you here to do this, and if you're not going to do it, then get out of the way. And he's like, oh my god, it's my dad, so I'm going to do it. But in the third episode, his dad isn't there. And there's a bit where he says, my father isn't watching, why am I doing this? Right? And it's like, that was his reason to do it, was because his father was watching. And if his father's not there, then what is his purpose in fighting these monsters? Yeah.
And that's is that the time where he decides to quit? He just doesn't.
It's just after that. Yeah. He fights that first one, then he quits. Yeah, just after that, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he has that second angel that turns up as that weird like floaty squiddy tentacly thing that has like whippy whoopah ching, and like his whips like cut through buildings and shit.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool though, that fight, because he's doing badly. Like Shinji has been through training like with these giant like assault rifles that they give for the robot, and they're just repetitively going like center the target, pull the trigger, center the target, pull the trigger in like simulations, and then when it comes to the real fight, he does it and it doesn't do shit, and then he's like, well, that's the only thing you've taught me, what now? And it's only like because some kids from his class like try and sneak out to watch the fight, and they kind of get in the way, and it's only at that point that he kind of what is he, it's not even Shinji that does it though, is it? Because that fight ends with his robot beating the shit out of this tentacly angel, but he's not really in control. Is that right? I can't remember.
No, that's the first one.
That's the first one.
Fight. The first one, he gets his arm broken, and like, and then the angel like shoots him through the head.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then shit. Like, yeah, everyone thinks he's dead, but then the Eva itself goes berserk, is what they call it.
No, because the episode this fucked me up, because the episode ends with the angel shooting the Eva straight through the head, and then it's like, to be continued, and you're like,
yeah,
what? You can't leave it there. And then at the end, that episode 2 begins with Shinji waking up in a hospital bed.
Yeah,
and
with the unfamiliar ceiling. Yeah.
With the unfamiliar ceiling, and then it flashes back to show what happened, and Shinji is in the Eva, but he's out of it, and so the Eva somehow takes charge or acts autonomously, which I'm guessing there's going to be it's all going to unravel throughout this series of what these Evas actually are. I think I've got a prediction, but I'm not going to say, because hopefully we will come back and do more episodes of this, and I want to be able to say that I was right.
Oh no! You've got to tell me what the prediction is now, because then we can see if you're right or not. So
and
what
history
do you think?
Will decide.
Yeah. So what do you think the Evas are?
Well, firstly, there's a bit where I can't remember what episode it's in, but Shinji is in the Eva, and
Yes.
like the helmet piece of the Eva kind of comes off, but it's not the whole head. It is like a helmet over a skull, and the Eva is standing next to a skyscraper, and Shinji looks out because now he's got nothing protecting him. He's just like exposed, and he looks out and sees the reflection of the Eva in the skyscraper, and then an exposed eye of the what is meant to be an Eva, the robot, but it's clearly biological. It moves and it's bright and green, and they clock eyes. So my theory is that the Evangelions are angels that have been captured, sedated, covered in armor, and are somehow stopped from wreaking havoc because they're always plugged in and got all these electrical stuff in them, and that was like their plan. It's like, we can't fight them with our weapons, so we're gonna take one and we're gonna cover it in armor and weapons, throw pilots in there, and then it's an even fight then. That's my theory, but I can't right now tell you why only one 14-year-old child can pilot each of the units, because there is that character of Rei you talked about, who's a 14-year-old girl they've tried to get to pilot the first Eva, Unit 00, but it's not gone well. And then, for some reason, Commander Akari knows that his son is the only one who can pilot Unit 01, but I don't know what that is yet, because I've not got that far.
No, fuck it. Let's just make this whole podcast series about Evangelion from now on. That's it. We're only going to do episodes about Evangelion.
We're just going to go through. Well, I'd be up for it. Like I say, I want to continue watching, so...
Yeah, or maybe we'll have to. Yeah, oh Christ. Yes. Yeah, that I like your theory. I'm not going to say how close or far away you are, how right or wrong. But yes, yeah. It's again one of those things where, like we were saying, they don't tell you because it's not initially important, right?
No.
Like these kinds of things will be unveiled kind of as the series goes on, but the point of the show isn't what are these robots, it's like that. This is where we're diving into Twin Peaks territory now, and David Lynch, because with Twin Peaks, the whole question of the show was who killed Laura Palmer. Right, episode 1, Laura Palmer's corpse washes up on the lakeside or the riverside in Twin Peaks, and then the question is who killed her, because it could be anyone in the town. Everyone's a suspect in this small town, and the detective shows up to try and solve the case. But ultimately, who killed Laura Palmer is not the point of the show, right? The point of the show is the characters that you meet within the town of Twin Peaks and what the death of Laura Palmer does to them and to their lives, right? How are the lives of these people affected by the death of this girl? And then we add in the David Lynch surreal nature of the place, and even the surrealist horror that comes out within the show is there to highlight the characters again, right? The nature, human nature, and what it means to be good, what it means to be evil, and that, I think that's again very similar to Neon Genesis Evangelion, where it's like the giant robots and the robot fights are there as the means of making the anime. Right? What's your anime about? It's about giant robots fighting giant aliens, and they're piloted by kids, and one of their dad is the boss. Great. Here's the money to make your show about depression, isolation, and and all of this. And so when you do get that moment, like you're saying, that just gorgeous moment where the helmet falls off, and it starts off. This is meant in a thematic sense rather than a sexual sense, although not necessarily. But the eye initially is like a vagina.
I noticed that, yeah.
Yes.
It's quite vaginal.
Yes, and then it opens up into this big green, as you're saying, that bulging, horrific eye is kind of it's kind of born out of it, and like that's not there because it's just a bit scary, right? It's there to, although it is, but it's there to give us something, and yeah, I see a lot of ties between the work that David Lynch does and this anime in particular. Yes, but again, that's the first thing about David Lynch. I'll inevitably come back to him later on. But we do meet this character of Rei, who is the one of the more iconic characters from the show because she's an anime character, right? She's got blue hair, bright blue hair. She pilots a giant robot.
She's 14 but has huge boobs.
Yes, yeah, which is something that we're kind of they're always coming back to. But again, we don't know that much about Rei at this point, other than episode 5. Its two titles. Its two titles are Rei Beyond the Heart and Rei 1.
Yeah.
So what did you think of that character of Rei? Because she is very important for Shinji's relationship with his father.
Well, yeah, then that only really comes to the fore in episode 5, where they flash back. Because, so episode 1, episode 1, Shinji shows up, is told that he's got to pilot this thing. He's like, no, I can't. And they're like, all right, fine, we'll get the other pilot. And they literally wheel Rei up to the robot, and she's covered in bandages. She's arms in a sling. She can barely move. And then like the whole facility gets shook by this angel attack, and she falls off the fucking gurney. And Shinji goes up and is like, "Oh, she's obviously really fucked up, and you can't make her do this." So that's when he gets in the thing. So episode 5 is about showing us how she got so fucked up, and like I said before, they've been trying to get her to pilot another one of these Evangelions. But it's taken like 7 months of testing, trying to get them to align and to synchronize with each other, and it's not gone well. And
the pilot has to synchronize with the robot.
Yeah.
Because there is something organic going on. It's not just like turning on your computer. It's like the brain waves of the machine and the pilot have to mesh. Which we see in the first episode, where the rubble, the base is under attack by the first angel attack. And rubble is falling down and is about to crush Shinji. But Unit 01, his robot, without him in it, without anybody in it, with not even being plugged in, puts its hand over him to protect him from falling rubble. And everyone's like, how the fuck did that happen? Because nobody's even piloting. Yeah. And then later on, when Shinji is inside, the Ava itself goes berserk and defeats the tentacly monster on its own. Yeah.
Yes, but in terms of how important Rei, I presume, will end up being to Shinji's relationship with his dad, is that he finds out that when this particular test with Rei and Unit 00 went really badly, she was ejected from the Eva while still indoors, and her capsule was like pinging off the ceiling of the facility, and then she like slams to the ground. And Commander Ikari, Shinji's dad, for the first time we see him like emotional at all. The whole time we've seen him in what I would suppose you would call the present day timeline, he's been very serious and businesslike, and with Shinji very curt and kind of mean, and it's not very nice. But we see when this test goes badly with Rei, he panics. He's like, no, and he like fucking runs back down into the testing area and tries to prise the door off of the escape capsule that Rei is in, and it's like it's been burned, and it's like the metal is super hot, but he doesn't care. He grabs hold of the door, and he pulls it open and gets her out, showing great care and he obviously cares about Rei for a reason that, again, up to episode 5, we don't really know. But as whilst again back in the present day, Rei has started to recover, and they're trying to get her back in her Eva, and Shinji notices a moment where Rey's sort of near Unit 00, and then his dad walks over to her, and they approach each other very, not jovially, very familiarly. And she like runs up to him, and she's happy to see him, and he seems to be showing her, because it's seen from Shinji's point of view at a distance, so we don't know what they're saying, but they obviously have a friendly relationship. And Shinji has never seen his dad give him anything like that kind of attention or affection.
Yeah, and that character of Rey as well is always shown to be alone, and is unable to make friendships or form relationships with anybody else. But when Shinji's father appears, she like does the typical anime girl thing of she runs in like the cute way. She clasps her hands together in front of her, like, "Oh, it's so good."
Yeah, like, and one leg on tiptoes and kind of like sort of digging her toe in the ground, and that thing.
Yeah, and Akari smiling when while he talks to her, which he has absolutely 100% never done.
Yeah.
To his son. And that does cause Shinji quite a large amount of jealousy, I think. But it's also a key for a moment later on when this is the famed escalator scene that we've spoken about for almost as long as that escalator. But Shinji says to her, "Are you scared to get back in the robot after it hurt you so much last time?" And she said, "Are you doubting your father's work?" And he goes, "Well," she says, like, "Don't you trust your father?" And he's like, "Why'd I trust a piece of shit father like him?"
You're paraphrasing. You're domming up the dialogue a little bit. But
that is pretty much what he says. He calls him like a dog of a father or something.
Yeah. She says, something like, "Do you not have any faith in your father's work?" Like, she puts it all about his project and his work, and I think Shinji says something about like, "Well, as a father, I don't," or something like that. Yeah. He brings it back down to his relationship with him, and while she's more interested in his legacy, and Yeah.
But then Rey turns around and slaps him across the face.
Yeah.
And she slaps him for insulting his own father. And we see at her apartment she has his glasses, Ikari's glasses that broke when he was freeing her. She has those at her apartment, and it's clear that there is a deep, deep connection between these two that Shinji can't understand. He's an outsider to the relationship with his own father. And it's troubling. It's very troubling to him.
Yeah. I can sympathise.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
We'll get on to more of the questions of you, how it makes you feel about your father in a bit. But what do you think so far about the themes of puberty and growing up?
You mentioned earlier about anime, and it can quite typically be kind of a bit hypersexual, and the female characters are all shaped in a very over the top way. And I haven't seen much anime at all, and I suppose I had some preconceptions in line with that. And then in the very first episode, when Shinji is being picked up by Misato, she's wearing like a short skirt, and there are very particular angles of shots, like when she's driving him to the facility, and there's I was going to say a camera angle, but the shot is from the perspective of her footwell, essentially. So you're looking up at Shinji in the passenger seat, but in the foreground is most of her legs up to
her inner thigh.
In her inner thigh, and there are moments when they're having dinner in her place, and she leans over the table to talk to him or yell at him or whatever. I can't remember what she's saying, but then that he glances down at her cleavage, and you're like, well, he's 14, I don't blame him. But then the actual show, the program, the direction goes around the back and shows you her butt in its shape, and she's wearing little cut-off shorts. And you're thinking, is this a typical kind of frivolous sexualization of a female character? And as we've been having this conversation, I'm talking about themes and how no shot is really wasted. And then your question of the themes of puberty, I'm thinking, oh, even that is kind of pointed. Yes. And it's not there just for the sake of titillating the viewer.
I want to draw a comparison between two scenes from two different movies, well, from Evangelion and a different movie, and ask you to tell me the difference in meaning from each one, right? So in Neon Genesis Evangelion Episode 5, Ray Beyond the Heart, Ray 1, Shinji goes to her apartment to deliver a key card to her, but he tries to ring her doorbell. The doorbell doesn't work. He knocks on the door. Nobody answers. He just goes inside, says, "Hello, are you here?" There's no answer, so he goes to put the card down, but kind of gets distracted when he sees his father's glasses that are on the table, the broken glasses. And he's thinking those are my father's glasses or something, and he puts them on himself. And as he does that, he hears the bathroom door open, and Ray is naked in the room with him. She's just come out of the shower. She's wrapped in a towel or something. But when she sees that he's wearing the glasses that she's treasured from when Commander Ikari saved her, she immediately goes over, removes the glasses, and they slip and they fall on top of each other, right? And he falls on top of her, and she is naked on the ground. Her towel falls away, and we see that he is inadvertently, I'm putting in air quotes, inadvertently holding her breast, right? He didn't intend to feel her up, but he fell on top of her and is holding her breast, and it's an awkward moment of puberty, right? So that's scene number one. Scene number two is Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon's Justice League, where, if you can remember that movie,
I do.
At this point, the Snyder Cut has not been released, I should say. So maybe the most amazing movie in cinema history. Zack Snyder's just a fucking piece of shit. But there's a bit in Justice League, I think it's a Joss Whedon moment probably, where the Flash falls on top of Wonder Woman. Do you remember that bit?
Yes, yeah. He saves her. And there's a fight, and he hasn't really got into the game yet because he's afraid of the action violency thing, and then he runs in and pushes her out of the way of something. Yeah.
Yes, and then they fall on top of each other, and he's like, "Oh no, I'm really sorry. I didn't want to get on top of you like this," or something to that effect. Some snide joke, and it feels dirty and at least when I remember seeing it, it felt like I
don't remember it that way.
No,
no. I'll defer to your memory because it's your point. I don't remember it perfectly, but
no. But do you feel between those two scenes that there is a difference between there just being a joke? Oh, he fell on top of her and she was naked.
Again, I felt that scene in Evangelion was a bit weird. And again, the over-sexualization of a female character, for one thing, but then she's also 14, and it's put together in a way where she walks, she's naked, but she walks past something, so you don't quite see everything, and yeah, when you see that Shinji's hand is on her breast, it's for a frame, you blink and you'd miss it, so it tries to balance it, I suppose. But then the scene earlier in episode 2 where we see Shinji is naked, he's standing in the doorway, and but the shot of his he's completely naked, but you can't see his junk because there's a beer can in the way. But he's panicking, so he doesn't really clock that he's naked. And there's a funny moment where Masato, who he's talking to, goes to grab that very beer can that is blocking the view of his penis, and you're thinking, oh, what's going to happen? And she lifts it up, and there's a can of condiment, a jar of a condiment or something behind the can, so he's still his shame is still blocked. So it doesn't like the slapstick element of that, because he's a boy, doesn't seem to be fairly represented when it's a female naked person on the other side. That is like you said, it's awkward, and it is meant to be kind of sexual because it's a reflection of pubertal development and all that stuff. But then she has this weird air, maybe this is just me, but Rey has this weird air of damage, that she doesn't care that she's naked. She's like almost sort of numb to the world. She's a loner. She's isolated. We've only seen her have any kind of positive reaction to a person when it's like a full-grown man, and the way that the show is kind of peppered in sexuality makes me a little bit nervous for that relationship between Rey and Commander Akari, and a little bit like in that scene in our last episode in Honey Boy between FKA Twigs' character Shy Girl and like a 12-year-old boy. So yeah, it kind of puts me a little bit on edge, but maybe that is quite a good reflection of the anxiety around being that age, and there are girls around, and your body is changing, and you're kind of drawn to a person in a way. There's a moment where they're at school. Rey and Shinji go to the same school, and for some reason the boys and the girls are separated in their PE class, and the girls are swimming and the boys are like running or playing basketball or something, and all the boys are sort of gawking at the girls, and the girls are all going, "Oh, look at those boys! I feel like I have to have a wash just because they're looking at me, like, haha, boys are gross." But Rey is sort of sat on her own, not doing anything, and Shinji is sort of staring at her, and he's intrigued by her and drawn to her because she's always alone. One of the other boys says, "Oh, I see you're staring at Rey," yeah, and they start really objectifying her body, picking out areas of her body, and being real laddish about it. And Shinji's like, "No, I'm just wonder why she's always alone." And we've talked about themes of isolation, and there's something about introvertedness as well, which, you know, the only two characters we really see that are very much like that are Rey and Shinji, and they're the same age, and they're both in the same world. They're both Evangelion pilots, and they're both broken to an extent.
Yeah, I think Rey is one of those characters I mean, it's a stupid thing to say, but you have to kind of keep your eye on her throughout the show, because a lot of those things you were saying about, like, your concerns around the character and things, like, those are things that are both going to be explained and compounded upon in big ways. I don't want to go into it too much, because it's part of the core of the show itself. But yeah, it's really interesting what you said about the slapstick nature of Shinji's nakedness being separate to the reverse, to when Rey is naked. And you're right. Although there's a slapstick moment where they fall on top of each other, the gross kind of comedy that comes from the Flash landing on Wonder Woman, and it's like, they just sexualized this for, like, no reason at all. Right? This was completely unnecessary. The sexualization of that moment, again, is talking to those wider themes, those wider ideas of puberty and growing up, and those desires and not knowing what to do with them, right? Because in that moment, Rey lies like a corpse, right? She doesn't try and push him off. She doesn't go, like, and there's a character that we're introduced later on who, if that happened, would be like, "Get the fuck off of me!" Like, what, you know? But they're there for like 10 seconds, looking at each other, and he is like panicking and doesn't move because he doesn't know what to do, and she is completely naked, but again, like, dead almost, until she says, "Please, could you move?" And it's not until she says that he realizes he's touching her breast and things, and it's sexual, not sexualized, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. And it's one of the things that's really interesting about Rey is the difference in how the show deals with her and how fans deal with her. And I think if you look at like the fandom surrounding Neon Genesis Evangelion, and there's a lot of that comes in with later movies and things like that as well, is fans do sexualize Rey. And you see like the statues, you get lots of like anime statues where it's like a girl doing the impossible distorted body poses that are just like nobody could ever do. But Rey is the one who is like standing looking sexy like that. But that's not the show.
No, I was just thinking that makes me sad. That feels like a real missing of the point.
Yes, yeah. And those moments when, like you were saying in the early episodes, where they're at the apartment and we see, as you're saying, the camera is behind Misato or looking up at Misato's leg, it's not so that we as the audience can be like, ooh, hubba hubba. It's because here is this 14-year-old boy with an adult woman having these... It's telling us about him, right? And his inner, his desires and the subconscious desires as well, right? Because he's not staring at her legs at that point, but the camera is showing us. They talk about the male gaze, right? And there was that thing a few weeks ago where Keira Knightley said she's never going to do a sex scene directed by a man. Did you read that?
I saw the headline, but I didn't read any deeper.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So Keira Knightley said she's not going to do a movie with a sex scene that's directed by a man because she doesn't want the male gaze to be put in on her body. So she only wants to do sex scenes now, if at all, directed by women, because they will be handled more sensitively towards her, I assume is what she believes. But the difference between the male gaze and Shinji's gaze is that is telling us characterization, not saying, oh, look at her butt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's something that happens a lot within this show. And another example is every time they're in the bathroom, they have washing is hanging up, and it's always underwear. It's always bras and pants that are being dried in the bathroom. On clothes pegs, there's always bras. And it's like Shinji is lying in the bath with these, like, with female underwear. And it's...
unmentionables, yeah.
Yeah, and it's that time in his life where that is some kind of mystical object.
Yeah.
Like a bra is like oh my god, women wear those over their breasts. Like
you tapping into some adolescent angst of your own there.
No, well, this goes back again to the Honey Boy discussion we had about when the younger version of Shia LaBeouf with Shy Girl is a boy transitioning into a man. And he has those sexual instincts are starting to appear, but he doesn't know what to do with them. Right? And that is the thing for Shinji as well, right? It's the old world is dying, right? His childhood world is dying, and he's transitioning into this adult world of responsibility, of some kind of duty, and then of sex as well, and like the fetishization of bras is a good example of that. It's not like sexy underwear, right? It's not like they're modeling in like Victoria's Secret stuff or anything like that. It's just like a sports bra or something like that, but that it's sexualizing clothes, like literally sexualizing the underwear, but so that we understand more about him, and about them as well. And we learned quite a lot about Rey in her apartment, and
yeah,
and who she is, and going forward. The next episode, episode 6, is Rey 2. So we just watched Rey 1, and we have Rey 2 coming next. Yeah, so there may be some more things revealed in the next episode.
Hopefully, there'll be personality traits are revealed, not necessarily more body parts.
Yes, yeah, that's fair enough. Was there something in that particularly stood out to you within the show? What did you take away from those first 5 episodes?
There was something in trying to think about what maybe the wider themes of it were. In those first 5 episodes, there's a little bit of a Spider-Man vibe of with great power comes great responsibility. Particularly after the episode where he decides to quit and leave, and the Nerve, the organisation, don't make a great deal of effort to keep him, and he's like basically at the train station ready to leave when the 2 guys from his school who actually kind of want to be his friend convince him to come back, but there's something in there where he knows that because he's the only person who can pilot this Eva, that if he doesn't, then they're down an Eva, and he knows that Rey's in not any condition to pilot her, so he's basically just dooming everyone. He just like with Spider-Man though, you're putting this kind of choice and weight of responsibility on a child and on a teenager who, as we've talked about, is going through so many changes in their emotionally and with their bodies, and he's so conflicted and confused with his relationship with his family. So that was just a kind of a parallel that I noticed, and that he's having to learn to put. He didn't choose this gift. He didn't choose this responsibility, but ultimately now, as Tom Holland says in Captain America: Civil War, if you have the ability to stop bad things happening and you don't, and then bad things happen, it's because of you. And that's heavy shit to put on a kid, and that's why Spider-Man is so great. Because if you put that on an adult, it's like, well, a mature adult could come to that decision logically, but a teenager, teenagers can't do shit.
Yeah. They can't even sit in the bath and look at underwear, which is kind of.
Yeah. Well, actually, that makes me think that talking about his pubertal development, it's well within the realms of possibility and reality that children who go through significant trauma or emotional difficulties can be stunted in their biological development as well. So he might be extra confused, like another 14-year-old. There are boys in his class who are always talking about girls and objectifying them. So if one of them had tripped and fallen on a naked Rey and got a hand on her boob, maybe they would have done some cheesy flash line or tried to advance that situation to their benefit. But Shinji is not in that place either, in terms of maturity or anything else.
Yeah. They're such fascinating characters, I think. These especially with Shinji and Rey. And then another character that comes in a couple of episodes' time. And I think, again, this is something that is lent to the show by its use of silence. Is you really do learn a lot about these characters when they don't say anything. And that's one of the things that's so special about it, is that Rey and Shinji don't say very much to each other at all. And when they do, she ends up slapping him.
Yeah.
Because he says how he feels about his dad. I'm going to do it again. God, what a good show.
No, it's great. You've put me onto some great things. And Lone Wolf and Cub, a couple of episodes ago, was another one that was in that realm of Japanese popular culture, and does way more than the cool shit that it just seems to do on the surface.
Yeah. All right. Final two questions about the themes and the ideas. What do you think of its portrayal of things like depression and loneliness? And what do you think about its religious symbology?
I'm going to skirt around the religious symbology question because I hadn't thought of that, and I think that's
not with the giant crosses that exploded from the monsters called angels.
No, I didn't notice the giant crosses exploding.
Oh, you need to watch Angel Attack again.
Well, maybe. Well, I'm going to continue, and maybe that's a question for maybe later on in this run.
Just something to think about. Yeah,
that's something to think about, and kind of similarly, in terms of its depiction of depression, like we're at the beginning, we're just learning about who Shinji is, and I don't know anything about who he was, and it remains to be seen where he's going to go and how he's going to develop. But I think I read in doing some research that, particularly in the realms of anime, having a father-son thing and a call to action from a father to a son is not particularly rare, but usually you'll find that the young person who is the hero and the protagonist is gung-ho and enthusiastic and wants to get in and loves the action and is like, yeah, I'm great. So to have a protagonist who is very self-doubting, very like you've been saying, isolated, is introverted, and is reluctant to answer the call to action, that is interesting. Especially like taking into my previous point about the responsibility of him. It has to be him. It can't be anybody else, but he really doesn't want to. That's going to be an intriguing thing to go, and especially when he's carrying obviously a lot of emotional baggage from his familial relationships. So yeah, I think a lot remains to be seen, basically.
Yeah. Some of my favourite imagery within the show so far comes from Rain After Running Away, or Hedgehog's Dilemma. And the idea of the Hedgehog's Dilemma is one of the characters describes Shinji as a hedgehog. And the Hedgehog's Dilemma is you are, a small creature who is easily preyed upon. So you put up your defenses of the spikes, of hedgehog spikes. But in doing so, you make it impossible for anyone to ever come close to you, right? So your fear of being hurt prevents anyone from making you feel safe. It's kind of the point.
That's an amazing analogy. Like, think about it. If that's beautiful. Yeah,
the Hedgehog's Dilemma. That's what it's all about. That's really a whole thing throughout the season. We see in that end of the episode where Misato is there at the train station for him, right? And they pause on a shot of him on the platform, unsure if he's going to get on the train. And then her standing by her car looking at, and it's just a shot of the two of them looking at each other for like 30 seconds. And it's really great. Those my favorite imagery in terms of the mental health stuff from that episode is Shinji has a Walkman that he listens to, and as it goes through a number of times, we see it get to the end of one track, which is like an hour long, and then it ticks over onto the previous track, and then that finishes and it goes back to it's like track 25 and 26 or something like that, and it just plays again and again and again. It is just those two things on loop, and he's lying in bed, I think in Unfamiliar Ceilings as well, actually. He's got the same thing. Yeah, and he's just there on his own, completely on his own in the world, in this loop. And that again is in the Rain After Running Away, because he gets on the circle train that goes around the outside of the city, like the M25 around London, I guess, or the Circle Line in the London Underground.
Yeah.
But it just goes around and around and around and around, and we see that montage of images of people getting on, people leaving, someone's reading their book, then they fall asleep under the book, but Shinji is sat in the same place, listening to the same thing on his Walkman as the train goes around and around and around.
You get the sense that he's on it all day. He's been skipping school after the last angel fight, and no one knows where he is. And yeah, at least on that day, it seems like he spent the entire day just on the train listening to that. I didn't actually pick up on the tracks or what was on the digital screen on his Walkman. I hadn't picked up on that at all.
Yeah, it's just ticking into the same thing again and again, and that's such a strong visual metaphor for a lot of mental health stuff. I think is that feeling, right, of just lying completely in your bed alone, having to listen to the same thing, the only thing that gives you some kind of security or meaning. And then when the train stops that night, he doesn't know what to do with himself.
End of the line, and he's
he sleeps on a bench or something like that, and that's it. But good show. Heavy show. It's heavy. It's not like 5 episodes is good, because after you watch like 6 or 7, you're just like, oh my god, I'm like overwhelmed with emotion.
And it's like a 26 episode run, so there's an awful lot to get into, and I've managed to avoid any spoilers except for a few questions around the ending and how either controversy or misunderstanding, and a couple of YouTube videos came up saying the ending explained. I'm like, oh, maybe this was going to be an interesting thing. And I think they even do a movie that followed it that told the story from another perspective and changed the ending or something. So I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes, and hopefully the kind of people who I always get a bit nervous about, the people who put up the whole this thing from this movie explained as if it's difficult to understand. And I'm thinking, if somebody thinks it's difficult to understand, a lot of the time it's because they don't get it and they haven't been paying attention. And maybe these people, I'm really just having a rail at people I have not watched their content. I don't know who they are. I've not even seen the rest of the show, but I worry that these are people who watch the show for the robots fighting the angels and didn't really get the rest of it. But I haven't seen it, so I guess.
No, I would say, definitely avoid spoilers. Don't read anything about it until you're finished, and then read everything about it.
Yeah.
Basically, because this is, I know exactly what you mean, because at the moment WandaVision is being aired, and they had the previous episode of WandaVision came out like yesterday or the day before. It's good. It's really good. I don't know if you saw that one yet.
I guess it's Friday night or it comes out Friday night.
Yeah. So that was episode 5, I think. Yes. And I'm not going to spoil the ending for you because it's a big one. So definitely watch it before it gets spoiled for you. But I watched that and I was like, oh my god, there's going to be so many explainer videos for this. Right, and it's not difficult to understand, but you can see YouTubers being like, "Oh my god!" and then this means this and this. It's like, no shit. And that was something about WandaVision that Marvel Studios said was, "Oh, we were worried that people weren't going to be able to understand it." Right, and WandaVision is not difficult to understand on any it gives you a lot, and it's a fucking great show. But it's not complicated, right? It's it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I know we had differing views on episode 4 because we're not going to any spoilers, but episode 4 is for all those people who thought it might be difficult to understand.
Yes.
And for especially people like Dominic, that episode kind of was a bit of a roadblock put up for no good reason.
Yeah, I didn't like being taken out of the world that was being created. And the themes that were being created for the sake of explaining the story.
Yeah, I thought it came too soon for me as well. But we can't talk about it anymore.
No.
It's too fresh.
Watch the next episode and message me about it afterwards.
Okay.
But what's different about Evangelion is, again, tying it back into the David Lynch things that I was talking about earlier on. When you finish Twin Peaks, the series Twin Peaks, it doesn't answer your questions in the way that a lot of people want it to, right? The one question that Twin Peaks does answer is who killed Laura Palmer. And when they answered that question, David Lynch left the series because he didn't want it to be answered, but the studios made them answer it, right? So that to him was the end of the show for 20 years. It's why he made a movie, but then season 3 of Twin Peaks came like 20 years after the original series. And Evangelion is very much similar to that. If you are expecting there to be a big giant climactic fight between the biggest the biggest alien, and then Shinji finally overcomes his trauma with his father and saves the day, and the world lives like that shit's not gonna happen.
Yeah, this ain't Hollywood.
Yeah. And so it is much more open to that kind of interpretation and meaning. So when people have like Evangelion explained, it's like, you can try, right? But we are going to get to the end of this series and you are going to be saying, what the fuck just happened? And that is both brilliant and infuriating at the same time. And that's why there are so many movies and things afterwards. Is like the fans of the show wanted there to be a bit where it's like, and now him and Ray get together and they live there, and it's like that's not this show.
Oh, that's lame.
Right?
That's like the flipping the True Romance ending.
Yeah, right.
Do you know about the 2 endings to True Romance?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's that whole thing where...
Yeah, tell us all now that you've brought it up.
True Romance, one of my favourite movies. Written by
Awesome
Quentin Tarantino, directed by Tony Scott, released in 1993, starring Christian Slater, Patricia Arquette, Christopher Walken.
Oh,
the cast in that is amazing. Who's the guy, who's the pop quiz hotshot guy from Speed? Dennis Hopper.
Yeah.
But essentially there's the end of the movie with Christian Slater's character Clarence and Patricia Arquette's... Wait, am I saying the right Arquette? There's too many Arquettes. I think it is Patricia Arquette, not Rosanna Arquette. Yeah, Patricia Arquette's character of Alabama. They're kind of caught in a gunfight between the police and drug dealers and a bunch of other bad guys. And Clarence gets like he gets shot, but it's kind of like a glancing blow across his head. And in the original scripted ending by Quentin Tarantino, Clarence dies and Alabama escapes on her own. But when Tony Scott came to write the movie, he changed the ending so that Clarence survives but loses an eye and he has to wear a gnarly eye patch. But they escape and they live happily ever after on a beach in some tropical paradise. So that is the Hollywood ending that wasn't written by the writer, but whether it was Tony Scott, the director's choice, or the studio were like leaning on him to give it a happy ending, who knows? But those endings, that's why there is a cliche of Hollywood endings, because of studio types who are afraid that people won't go see their movie. It doesn't have a happy ending because people are come to movies for escapism and to be reminded that everything's going to be okay and real life is much worse. When I don't know. For me personally, I'd rather see something more realistic.
Yes. If you're watching Evangelion and you want the one where they get together at the end and live a happy life because they stopped evil.
Oh yeah, Hunger Games 2. That's got another bullshit happy ending.
Yeah. Watch Avatar: The Last Airbender, because that will... it's a great show, great themes, great ideas, great characters, good ending. Right? Like, that's the one you want to watch. But if you want something that's going to leave you with questions about what you've seen, about life, about then Evangelion is the way to go. So I'm excited to get to that ending again, because now I have read so much about it and I've seen a bunch of those Evangelion explained, and some of it I'm like, that was something I missed when I watched. Like you're saying, if you watch closely enough, then things, it does add up. And so another thing that David Lynch says is people say your work is so confusing, like there's so many interpretations, and David Lynch is like, it's all there. I've given it to you. It's, if you just watch it, then you'll find the answer. It's not confusing if you watch it. And I think he asks too much of audiences sometimes, but I think watching Evangelion again this time, I'm really interested to see as I'm like putting things together. And already with that first episode with Rei, especially with Shinji falling on top of her in that moment, it's like oh boy, that is not necessarily foreshadowing, but again, it's like it's the start of another thematic link that's going to go through. So yeah, I'm really excited to keep watching it and to get your ideas and what you think about it as we go.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it'll be good to do it in small chunks too, because it'll be good to know, like, after 5 more episodes, whether my theories have changed or my feelings about it have changed, or and then go another 5 and then another 5 and just keep checking in. check on how or at least if you've seen it all before, I'll check on my developments.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Neon Genesis Evangelion episodes 1-5. Angel Attack, Unfamiliar Ceiling, Silent Phone, Rain After Running Away, Ray Beyond the Heart. How does it connect to you and your relationship with your father? Do you see much of Gendo Ikari within Brian Senior?
Brian Senior. No, but it did. What I've been trying to think about, because a lot of the things we talk about, maybe 50-50 split, I can't see a direct link between me and my dad. So if that's the case, then I want to think about imagining if it was. So imagining that your father was more interested in his work than he is in raising you, and then the only time that he shows any interest in you is when you are of use to him and his work. That's like it's like Shinji has a sibling, and his sibling is Nerve, and Nerve is the favorite child, and Shinji's just like the extra one. But imagine that Nerve's a baby, and his dad's like,
"It's Ray. It's Ray, right? Like, that's...
well, is it? I don't know."
Yeah,
I know you're talking metaphorically, but
yes, yeah.
It seems it's definitely going that way, and so maybe there are some thoughts, some questions you could ask about favoritism between siblings. You and I both have a younger brother, and there are certainly times when I was younger when I thought that my parents preferred Connor to me, but then as we got older, let's say he put a lot more strain on them than I did. So I kind of fell off the hook. I was like, well, I can't really do any worse than that, can I? So I'm set.
Yeah.
Have you ever quarreled with those ideas in your family?
Yes, for sure. Not with my dad, because I'm my dad's only child. But my brother is my mum and my stepdad's child, and I grew up in the house with my mum and my stepdad, which meant that I was 8 when Harvey was born, when my brother was born. I was 7 or 8, and I'd been living with my stepdad for 4 years by then. So we had already been living together for a long time before my brother arrived. But then we were in a house where it was me, my stepdad, and then his actual son.
Yeah, they're right. All directly related to each other, and you're the
yes.
offshoot.
Yes, and then we have things like, Harvey and Dom, you can go and stay with my stepdad's parents, so Harvey's grandparents, like that, and it's like these people trying to be your grandparents, but they're not. And we all kind of know, right? And I'm very, very fortunate with that side of my family, with my stepdad's side of the family, because some people have like horror stories of having step parents and like step families, and like, oh, they never accepted me, they never, whatever. But all of that side of the family has always been great, like really, really, really great. And like, there's obvious favoritism from them towards my brother because like he's their grandchild, right? Like genuinely their grandchild, and like I don't begrudge any of that for sure.
Yeah.
When my brother turned 18, his grandfather gave him the money to buy his car and stuff like that, right? So like none of that was given towards me, but they're not actually my grandparents, right? And they did. I'm not like, oh well, they should have given me, because they were always far nicer to me than they had to have been, and much more loving and caring than they had to be. So no, that's I've been very lucky with that. But that doesn't mean that growing up it wasn't like oh well, obviously my stepdad loves my brother more because he's actually his son and I'm not actually his son, and it was never said, and I don't think that it's true. But growing up when you're a teenager, those are the things that go through your head and that you quarrel with, and that you think about and kind of have to come to some sort of terms with as well, right? Is that it's just something you have to deal with, I think.
But, and you can come to a logical place in the end, like you have. Feeling that, they're that's Harvey's blood family, yes. And whereas you've been welcomed in kindly, but you're not their complete offspring.
No, I'm not expecting to be written into their will or something like that. Yeah. Right, it's not going to be like, oh, I can't believe they left Harvey a house, but there was nothing for me. It's not. It's not.
Do you have
like that.
Do you have grandparents on your dad's side?
Yes. Yeah. Or the thing is, and this will tie into to other daddy issue stuff perhaps. So my parents divorced when I was 4, and my mum's parents are both divorced, and my stepdad's parents are both divorced. So it means I have 6 different sets of grandparents, 6 or 7 different sets of grandparents. I guess I've got my dad's mum and dad. Then I had my mum's mum and her husband. Then my mum's dad. So we had 3. Then I had my stepdad's dad and his wife, and then my stepdad's mum and her husband. So it's like 5 different sets of grandparents.
That's so confusing.
Everyone was divorced except for my grandma and my dad's parents, who may have been much happier if they had gotten divorced. Is that kind of
classically,
yeah. But that is an impact of going into relationships of my own, is just being absolutely terrified of divorce, because when everyone in your family is a divorcee except for the people who should have got divorced, it's oh dear,
that's that has to prey on your mind. There's only one divorce in any of my extended family. One of my uncles divorced his wife, and then I think if I go back another generation, I know that both of my mum's parents had step parents, but I think that was more of a, I don't know if those were divorces or if they were widows or widowers.
War deaths or something like that. Yeah.
But the whole concept of step parents was so alien to me that when I found out that my granddad had a stepdad, I was like, what?
Yeah, right.
What is that? I thought we were all good old Christian people who never, once you're in, you're in. You don't want to go to hell, better not get divorced.
Yeah. That'll be a big thing for my relationships going forward. One of those existential questions, like Shinji. For one of my Shinji questions will be, can I be the person I have to be for a relationship to survive, or am I the kind of person who dooms their relationships from the start just because of who I am? And Shinji, it's turning into Neon Genesis Daveangelion now.
Evangelion? No. Evangelion? No, it doesn't work.
We'll workshop it for
I think.
Yeah, we'll workshop it for the next episode, and we'll come back. Daveangelion is by far the best so far.
I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
How about NeDom Genesis Evangelion?
NeDom Genesis Daveangelion.
That's I've got to change the title of the channel now.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the name of our 5-part series on this
NeDom
amazing
Genesis Daveangelion. Oh, I love it. It just flows. It just flows.
Well, thank you, listeners, for joining us on this first dive. I think this topic may be one that people actually really get into because it has a pretty dedicated fan base. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if people have any thoughts, if there's something that we missed. Of course, if there is something that we missed, we still have 5 episodes to come. So don't be like, oh my god, I can't believe you didn't talk about, because maybe we're going to talk about it in the next. But no, actually do, because it's really good for driving views in the YouTube algorithm if you comment. So if you want to comment saying, "Oh, I can't believe that you did," just put the brackets. Just put the brackets. Don't mean it. It's just for the algorithm, and I'll be I'll upvote you Reddit style. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Any recommendations? Any questions? Any thoughts? Leave them down below. Thank you guys very much for listening, and we will see you next time.
I can't wait. Ever since I was a little boy, people have enjoyed hearing the sound of my voice. That's my Morgan Freeman. It's not great.